what was the panel's thoughts then on a possible answer to that? There's been tech solutions. People have talked about management. David's referred to the resistance to change. There's been a lot of talk about a demographic dip within the oil and gas industry. What's the panel's thoughts that actually one of the reasons there hasn't been changes is because the people who've remained within the oil industry, there is this big gap in between those senior and experienced.
Where are you going with this question? just to be clear, there's a lot of
from that.
There's a lot of old farts. Yeah.
I understand that. The biggest problem I saw 2
I'm in
years
the
ago.
wrong panel.
Biggest problem I saw 2 years ago is how do these people who feel personally sometimes threatened by new technology, how can you capture this immense depth of knowledge and experience without the risk of someone going, actually, well, let's just get some young local guys, young Libyans doing it because actually there's a lot of them and they're quite driven.
Yeah, but
the question is, how do you see the solution to human factors?
Go ahead. Ivan, why don't you start? Microphone. The table microphones work fine. Yeah.
Okay. I exclude myself from that age gap problem that you're defining there. I think that's changing quite rapidly. I think if you notice the last 5 years, the way some technologies or the management of some technologies have spread worldwide in a period of 3 years, whereas it took 10, 15 to get out of the Panhandle or Texas, I think is quite impressive. I think it's moving very rapidly now, and this is why I'm very bullish and very supportive of acknowledging, accepting, and being open about all these things. Okay, the industry remains conservative. We're all conservative, and you cannot ask any national oil company to bring a funky guy or girl to run a new software in the oil field that sustain the livelihood of the country. That's not going to change. But you have so many needs and pressures that, I know oil fields in very conservative countries like Mexico where, 50 types of EOR are being applied into that place. And they've been pretty wild as well in injecting nitrogen and things. Overall, I'm very bullish. I don't know if I think there is a change in generation. There is, I put myself on the Britney Spears generation. I don't know my colleagues, but I do think that there is a change in generation, and there's a great excitement in terms of accepting and adopting new technologies. My former company, Statoil, is all about technology. In fact, they probably overdo it and overspend, but it's all about technology. You show up with a new piece of equipment, and there's somebody that will listen to you. But I think there's a real change. I don't think there's no any data to express it, but I think you have to feel it.
Follow-up question: how much of that bullishness remains outside BRIC countries? So Brazil, Russia, India, China. Out of that growing up, is there a difference, you think, in between BRIC countries and?
I'm spending a lot of time in Brazil, and and I'm looking at a lot of stuff in Nigeria and things like that. I really see a tremendous drive to adopt and bring new things. Anything new is being adopted and applied. What is really the key, in my view, is that generally those early adopters are people that have no legacy and no baggage. Okay, like the company that I'm advising and working with. The guy has, the owner is not a geologist, and that's probably very good.
Yeah, let me try. John, you've experience of your own startup, basically. And one of the things we touched on, I think it was actually Ivan that mentioned it, there's a difficulty of getting funding for new technology startups in Europe. Archex is another company that's
we went through
is
the
a
process
startup.
together with Black and Archex.
And the US is very different, isn't it? The US sort of venture capitalists see technology as a thing to invest in, whereas here it seems to be more, Is that your experience, or?
It's I think it's my experience, and I think it's very well documented across all spheres. I don't think it's just related to the oil and gas business. You know, investors in Europe, particularly in the UK, who I have more experience of, tend to be very risk averse. In the United States, they're less risk averse, and indeed, if you've tried to run a company before and you've failed, they actually see that as a bit of credibility, as opposed to somebody who's just come off the street and has come along with a bright idea. So yeah, I think they're a lot more tolerant of failure, and they're more tolerant of risk.
Yeah,
and they've got bigger pockets.
It is interesting when you start thinking about who are the European investors in oil and gas technology companies. You think energy ventures, and then you start going, and they're Norwegian, and you start going, I can't quite think of.
No, high-tech vision.
Yeah, high-tech, Norwegian as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Energy ventures are investors in Archex, aren't they? Yeah.
Can I just,
yeah, Dave, please.
Then going back to this question about the technology, why does it seem to take so long? I can go back probably 20, 25 years, and people were thinking multidisciplinary teams were a good idea to have multidisciplinary teams. And I think Dave recruited me to BP and sneaked me into the geophysics department, telling everybody I was a geophysicist. And then I think the chief geophysicist found out, he told a little bit of a porky, that, but Dave was literally trying to get geologists into an area that was specifically geophysics. And he was part of the guys that were driving these multidisciplinary, diverse teams. And not so long ago, I was working in Kuwait, leading an oil field with reservoir engineers. It had 22 nationalities, and it had engineers, drillers. And we used to have meetings that were like far and away from these restricted meetings. Call them little stakeholders, if you like. So I think we're slow because of the way things are organised. And the downside of that, and when things really do change, and I'll finish on this point, without naming the company, I became part of a review team that looked at major capital projects. And we're out in the Far East, and we've got to the stage where we're in production. Get all the geologists out, don't need them anymore, just get these guys back drilling. And the oil's coming out the ground and everybody's happy, and they said, why don't we do this here? Well, there was a good reason why I didn't previously do that, because there's a little report that says this place is faulty to hell, it's fractured to hell. But nobody went back and got that report, and the geologist had already been sent away. Put a pile of money in, drilled a load of holes, put a lot of injection, and villagers are having steam coming up through the houses and everything. So I think it's an organisational thing, and really things change when disasters happen, or things go slightly wrong. And our industry is driven by probably more disasters or things going wrong than most other industries, I would say. The big changes.
I think one's oil reserves, and if you're a country, in a particular country, often dictate the amount of expenditure. I mean, I've been very impressed with some of the technology Saudi Aramco has been trying. They've been trying all sorts of things, and very recently, and new things. If I look further east, the Far East generally, where oil reserves are very low, very, very low, even something like 3D technology is not all that common.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody else got a question? Because I've got a couple more, but really having the audience ask questions is much better than me. Yeah, please.
What do the panel think about recording more data, say, for example, on that CGG display that they showed, with not only the PP data, but the PS data? It's a very underutilized sort of recording, and even when we do it in OBC, everybody kicks up about paying for it. So what do the panel think about that?
Right.
Go ahead, Ian, please. Yeah.
Number one, even in the marine environment where data quality is much better than land on average, it's at least 10 times more complicated to process and interpret the PS, the converted wave data. On land, it's a bit of a nightmare.
So that's the reason.
Simple answer.
So it's a practical, just difficult. Yeah.
I mean, has BP or Shell or anybody actually done that on land and put up with some PP data and PS data? I know that some people on the Marcellus shales have been recently
recording. They've been recently recording PP data and PS data in order to get things like the carbon content and also the fracture analysis up in the Marcellus.
No, it's wonderful if you can do that. If you go back to the 80s, all the big oil companies in the US, like Amoco, Arco, Shell, had their own shear wave seismic crews, and they were out there. The research departments were out there doing shear wave seismic, and all that data disappeared back into the research departments and was never seen again, almost. Now, it's worth retrying that because, of course, in those days the channel count was probably limited to 48, and now it's almost unlimited. So it could be worth retrying that on land. But if you look through the land literature, there are very, very, very few papers with successful shear waves. Kim and Kim would be one of them, but there's very few.
And John, is yours a vertical component only system, or yeah? Do you get pressure for 3 components? I suppose is what I'm asking. Yeah.
We're not really seeing a drive towards it. We are coming up with a 4-channel box, but that's probably more related to what Ian was talking about in his talk about the shallow buried arrays. So that would still be single dimension.
Because I see. Okay.
Dave, I do have mentioning or following on from Ivan, Saudi Aramco I had lots of dealings with, and I do see them as somebody who they'll shoot a 3D seismic, they get an FTG survey, EMGS, and they've got a cube of Earth that they use as a research project. And I'm not saying whether or not they've not just drilled a gas discovery on it, but it's internal research, and they're a fantastic company to go and float ideas to. The downside of it is the bureaucracy that you have to go through. So on the one hand, with the good companies, and Pemex are probably another one, they really take everything on. But maybe it's, we've not got the right people opening the doors or whatever, but there's a bureaucratic barrier. Yeah. With regards to BPs, the Shells and whatever, their barriers, in my humble opinion, are probably what they call the technology gatekeepers, depending on who they are. And we go in and we talk to the gravity specialist and show them inside, and they'll go, yeah, and what's the noise on that and whatever. And then bypassing, the geologist who's working in an area says, I like that, I've seen, oh, look at that trend. And it's like 2 different people talking about your data. And I think that the gatekeepers and the asset, there's got to be better linkage. Might come across as criticism. It's the way they've got to do the business. Somebody's got the gravity budget, and it's always easier not to spend the money and look good.
Not being a gatekeeper is a fully pensionable post, I think.
I mean, I grew up in a family of geophysicists, and I think that I always heard that geophysics is a few cents on the barrel versus a number of dollars per barrel on the drilling activity. And of course, you grew up in industry, and you said, but it's amazing to see how discredited and how little attention is still the geophysics field, and the intensity of work goes into that preliminary stage versus going, obviously you have to drill together, but wells have become so expensive that you do have to go through an additional interim stage. I do think that as an industry, there are companies, any company from Petra to ExxonMobil, they're doing 3 things: project management, risking capital, and managing technology. Those are the 3 things they have to do good and return money to shareholders. But the management of technology is too far away from the decision making and too embedded in rooms that never goes out. And I think the changes, I think they're being unleashed, but it's not being unleashed is still strong. And hence, crazy guys or very adventurous individuals, women and men, go out and grab land or shoot whatever they can and come up with something new.
Very good. Well, I got one question to finish, and then we'll go to lunch. Well, actually, we'll draw the raffle prize and then go to lunch. But final question for the four of you is, if you had to nominate one technology that we'll be hearing a lot about in 3 years' time, and you know, 3 years ago somebody should have said gradient gravimetry or gravity gradiometry, and they'd have been right. What would it be today, Ian?
It would be anything which improves the recovery factor significantly. And that could be drilling technology, mostly geochemistry, mostly time-lapse seismic, partly. I mean, all these things add a few percent. And anything that does that is going to be, especially if the planet realizes it's gone over its peak production.
Okay. David?
Obviously, I could say gravity gradiometry, which I think will be there, but I would prefer to come away from the actual technology. 25 years ago, handling 3 disciplines and 4 different people in terms of a geologist, geophysicist and a reservoir engineer was difficult enough. I think what will make the difference over the next 10 years is getting a few old guys who can actually talk to drillers, and they can talk to the technical gamekeepers, if you like, gatekeepers, can talk to geologists, and basically it's going to be, I think it's more of a management thing. You've got to get individuals who are willing to accept diverse people and diverse technologies, and getting those people to a position of power. I don't mean ultimate power, but at least getting a voice up there. So I don't see any one particular technology, I just see the ability to link it with, we've already got a lot of great technology, and it's just spreading it out.
Okay, very good.
I like very much what my friend here is doing. I think for remote areas and for the vast onshore areas around the world, it's going to be really important. The other one that I really believe on is what I call environmental fracking or environmental stimulation technologies, labeling that, and that is a whole package. If we are going to be doing far more intensive, let's say, stimulation activities around the world to unlock all these hydrocarbons, we do have to get to a point where you know, it's acceptable and can operate everywhere. And I call it environmental frack. It could combine air and foam and whatever, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, understood. And John, and probably not wireless side.
But I think technologies are going to push towards the unconventional side. I think that's, you know, we're obviously going to see a very large emergence of that from the exploitation point of view in countries outside the United States. So I think technology will be aimed at that. And just coming back to the overall onshore seismic technology sphere, I think we'll see more miniaturization. I think we will see further enhancement in the transmission of data. And I think we'll see slightly wacky ways of actually monitoring the surveys, and I don't think you'll necessarily have a central unit based out on a crew somewhere. I think it may well be at the seismic contractor's headquarters in some central location.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. One final